denied that he was going to run for presidency at any stage in time. But over the last 10 years, people had become more and more alienated. You had this business elite that was coming more and more powerful, and the rest of the people were becoming poorer. Life had become extremely difficult for a lot of people. Food had gone, the prices of food had gone very, very high, and discontent was just rising. I don't think anyone expected that things would happen at this particular moment in time, but certainly once it happened, it just snowballed. And as one of the protesters told me, and that's one of the protesters who has been camped here on Liberation Square since the 25th of January, she told me that somehow all that violence that happened, the crackdown of the government, the killing of people, that was somehow a blessing in disguise, despite the loss of life, because it actually increased their resolve to stay here and to continue. And if President Mubarak does step down tonight, they will still stay here until they get everything they have been asking for, or at least that's the mood for tonight.
But why do you think that everything has eventually come to a head tonight, this evening?
That I can't give you really the full answer for that, but I do think that about 2 days ago, Wael Ghanem, the Google executive that is really the man behind all this Facebook campaign that sparked the wave of demonstrations, was released, and he went on one of the commercial channels here in Egypt, and it was a very, very emotional interview. He started crying, and he actually left the set. Now, that was a moment where Egyptians were galvanized. A lot of people who had not joined the protest decided to come and see for themselves. And it's after that interview that even workers, factory workers, labor unions, and syndicates decided also to go to the streets, demanding for better wages, demanding for better living conditions. And I think that was a galvanizing moment, just this mere interview of this one person who appeared on TV, and he said, listen guys, I live in Dubai, I have a big villa, I have a pool, I have a very comfortable life, I can perfectly well not care about what is going on in the country. He said, but I want the country to change because Egyptians deserve a better country. And that is probably a very simple message that resonated very, very much.
Hoda, thanks a lot. Let's go down below you and we can speak to the flag waving, amongst the flag waving crowds. We've got Jackie Rowland, our correspondent there. Jackie, describe the scene for us. It must be jubilant.
Yeah, I mean, it is really quite electric. It's a really loud party atmosphere. I've had to dive into a doorway just to be able to hear you so we can have this conversation. People are celebrating victory. It's like being in a football crowd when the team has just won the championship. There's this anticipation of victory. Every now and again, a huge cheer goes up. People are singing, people are dancing, and there's a real sense that tonight is a moment in history. It's
not taking anything that the army has said as being progress.
Certainly not. It seems that the statement of the army has really rolled over the backs of people here. I haven't heard any sort of even kind of indication that people are actually stopping and thinking about what was said and what was the army trying to convey as a message. But I also haven't seen any hardening of tone against the army. Any slogan that comes out, it's still about the people and the army stand united. And I think that is a very rational decision taken here by protesters. To criticize the army is a very, very delicate matter. It's something that could really alienate the people outside of Liberation Square, those who are not protesting. The army has a very high standing in people's minds and hearts here in Egypt, and criticizing them would probably red line that the protesters don't want to cross, at least as yet. You have to understand also that the speech given by President Mubarak on Thursday night is one that actually had some people outside of Liberation Square, the less sort of hard protesters, protesters think. I have received many phone calls and emails from people sitting at home telling us, what do these protesters want? The president has said that he's going to hand over some of his powers to Vice President Omar Suleiman. What do they want more? They have no intention of ever leaving Liberation Square. So there are people outside who are thinking and who are listening to President Hosni Mubarak. And I think for the people here inside Liberation Square, I think the struggle now is to try to keep the momentum and to also show them or prove the point that there is no point of trusting whatever comes out from the political authority at the moment, because so far they haven't been proved. They haven't proven that they're worthy of the trust. That is at least the opinion here on Liberation Square.
All right, Hoda Abdelhamid live in Cairo, and on the left of your screen there you can see the pictures of the crowds there in the center of the capital city. We've just heard from retired General Talat Musallam, who says that the Army's Supreme Council is currently in session once again and is planning to issue a third statement in the coming hours regarding the situation, maybe responding to the pictures you're seeing there. Cairo on the left, on the right, Alexandria, where the reaction of the crowds today has been strong and loud and angry. Let's go to Jamal El-Shail, who's been watching the events there. Jamal, no let-up, it would seem, from what we can see in the fervour.
Area, there are less people coming in from because there's also the army station in that area. It's only 1 o'clock here in Cairo, and if I go by any measurement of what happened over the past few days, usually the square fills up after 1 o'clock. So it's just it remains really to be seen what will happen in the next few hours.
All right, well, it remains to be seen, but there's plenty to be heard, Hoda. Let's just listen in again at what is a remarkable amount of noise. Let me just remind you that this crowd is now probably been informed that the army, contrary to some people's predictions, has not decided to take interim power in the government, has not called upon the president to step aside, and has basically suggested that the status quo will persist and it would rather see the protesters go home. As you can see from these pictures in Cairo, those protesters have absolutely no intention of going anywhere right now. They're really making their voices heard. And it's not just in Cairo. Let's go to Alexandria and bring you some pictures from there. We have similar scenes happening in the second biggest city in Egypt. And as you can see, a massive crowd also having turned out on the streets there. Our correspondent Jamal El-Shail is also there and joins us now. Jamal, tell us what you've been seeing over the past few hours.
Well, Timur, as every minute goes by, thousands of pro-democracy protesters and anti-government activists are joining a crowd that is easily, if you just look to my left shoulder, easily in the hundreds of thousands. They are currently partaking in Friday prayers. Obviously, the short time difference between Cairo and Alexandria means that the worshippers here have just started Friday prayers. The sermon which was given before that was another one filled with anti-government sentiment, filled with anti-Mubarak messages, and filled with the calls for democracy and freedom for the Egyptian people. The Imam here is a very well-known person, not only in Alexandria but across Egypt, someone who has been a staunch opposer, or opponent rather, to the regime. And the fact that he has been able to come and give a sermon in the mosque is a sign of just how much power the people have. He's only come here with the protection of the people, and the people here really do feel that they are making gains despite the lack.
Resort to the committee of intellectual or wise men. We call him the committee of the miserable. It is the youth who exploded this noble revolution.